every great person who's ever succeeded at everything has almost guaranteed to have a lot of failures. So,
well, it's not failure, it's feedback.
Can I ask you a question?
Go for it.
What do you qualify as success now?
So I always say that success is what you make it. I would say that you need to set out what looks like success for you, and then if you achieve it, then you're successful. And if you don't, you don't. And I think success as a question is always asked normally in terms of finances.
Yeah,
and people, are you successful? And from a monetary perspective, you could say that guy's super successful. He's just made £1 million. Well, if he'd set out to make £1 billion, then actually he's not successful because he's not achieved what he wants to achieve. Whereas on the other side, maybe someone's life goal is to be the best mother, the best wife, and the best friend that someone can ask for, and if they tick all those boxes, but that's utterly skint, they are still super successful. And I think there's no right answer. It's whatever's right for you.
Totally, yeah.
You've got to go all in on the things that you're world class at, and you are a world class relationship builder. Like I remember us meeting at that event, and immediately there was a report. I wanted to listen to you. I mean, you've got some crazy fucking stories. But being in your presence, it was entertaining. It was like, you've got this natural charisma, and because of that, you're great at building relationships. Now look, not everyone's got that. And so I think the key, and Gary Vaynerchuk talks about this a lot, is to be self-aware enough to know what your strengths are and what they're not. And so, I've always been very good at building relationships with people, and that's definitely a skill set I've got. But there's also areas that I'm not so skilled in. So, it makes sense for me to bring people into my company that fill those gaps. So, if you're unbelievably good at techie stuff, then the best way for you to probably build or generate inquiries or leads for your business is by doing the tech stuff that you know so well and doing it all online. If you're naturally a people person, great relationship builder, don't even think about trying to do any of the tech stuff. Get out and meet with people, because that's going to give you a much better chance of success. So I think it's being self-aware enough to know what you're great at and what you're not, and try and build your business around the skill that you possess that is your primary skill.
Three tips that a one-man band contractor in your space or a similar space to you can implement for fast growth.
Yeah, well, I don't know about fast growth. Business is a long-term venture, and we've been going 40 years, and it doesn't happen overnight. Anybody that thinks it's quick, get rich quick, it don't work like that. It's a long-term project. So the first thing I would say to anybody is the quicker you can start employing people or joining with you, whether whichever basis it may be, then that's the way forward. The second thing that obviously there's a million tips, or not a million tips, a million things that you can try and do in business. But another good one that worked with us was we have a policy of if you become a Pimlico customer, we work on the basis that you're a Pimlico customer for life. So I'm probably trying to simplify it and say retain customers. There's customers now that are working for us that when I was a self-employed plumber in Pimlico that are still with us today. I mean, most of them are dead, but there's still a few there. So retain customers undoubtedly. And the most important thing, don't matter what your uniform is, how good your branding is, how good that you come across, sort of you're taking your calls, how efficient you are, quality of service is undoubtedly probably the leading factor here. So I would say to anybody, whatever you're offering as a service, whatever product you're making, whatever you're actually doing, people will always pay for quality. If it's like if you want a Savile Row suit, you go to Savile Row. And I think in business, people will always pay for quality. Quality comes through. End of the day, we can turn up on time, we can have the best uniform, we can be on the telly, but if you don't offer them a good job at the end of the day, basically I suppose if water's pissing through the ceiling at the end of the day, waste of time. Quality of service is, I think, one of the most important things in business.
So the three things that I said were crucial to my success
and I think that anyone can apply to their success, and that these are things that will make you super successful during the good economy, and will still be able to make you keep your head above water during shit economy. First of all, you've got to have a skill, and there's no specific answer of what that skill is, but you have to have a skill that people are willing to pay for. Now, in the interview I did, the example I was talking about is, my skill set is being able to put deals together. My skill set is being able to raise finance for people. That is a skill that people will pay for. And again, there's going to be high paid skills and lower paid skills, but so many of you have already got a skill, and if you haven't got a skill, now's the time to go and learn it. A skill that you can monetize, whether you are a gardener, a hairdresser, a beautician, an expert at social media. Vivian, who was on here, may still be on here, is a photographer. Are you a chef? Whatever your skill is, make sure you've got a skill. And the more skills you've got, obviously the more valuable you are, but people always want those skills in times of plenty and in times of few. So number one, make sure you've got a skill. Make sure you can add value to someone. If you effectively work for someone else at the moment and don't have anything unique to bring to the table, I'm not trying to sound derogatory when I'm saying this to you, but you don't have a skill that other people are going to want if you are out of a job. If you work in an office and you don't bring anything special to the party, then should you lose your job, you are going to be someone who is a lot more vulnerable than somebody else. So okay, Viv's name's popped up on there again, so Viv's still here. So Viv has a skill as a photographer. So during the good times, she can be working 5 or 6 days a week. During the crap times now, obviously, she's struggling to get work doing events because there are no events, there are no weddings, but she still has a skill that she's able to monetize in different ways. And she may not be able to get as much money as she wants, or she may not be able to get as much money as she would from an event right now. I'm sure that will grow as she spends more time on the different directions she's going down. But she has a skill, and that's the same whether you're a hairdresser, a gardener, a beautician, can you speak fluent French? So you could be a French teacher or a translator. So number one, you've got to have a skill. Number two, you've got to be able to communicate. So these were the three things I said. I said skill, communicate. Now by communicate, I'm talking about getting your message across to your audience. I'm talking about the ability to sell. I'm talking about the ability to communicate on social media, the ability to network. Networking is something I've always said has been fundamental to my success. I've got an amazing Rolodex of people, from people with skills to people with money to people with influence to people with celebrity. I've always been very good at communicating and building relationships with those people. And if you're shy, then maybe you can start online. But again, like a lot of the things we talk about, the only way to get better at something is to practice it and to do it. And there's no shortcut, there's no easy way. You've got to have that first conversation, then have that second conversation, then have that third conversation. And ultimately, you may never like it, but you'll certainly get easier at it. So have a skill, be able to communicate, and third, I said, I believe I've been successful because I have a positive outlook on life, and I always look at the good rather than the bad. This is something we always talk, you guys and I talk about every night during lockdown. That we can be sat at home moaning about how bad everything is because our businesses are closed down and the world's come to an end, or we can be sat here thinking of strategies to make our businesses work during lockdown, during quarantine. We can be sat here thinking of strategies to make ourselves successful when we come out of this. I was on the phone to a friend of mine today, and I won't say who or what about, but we were talking. They were telling me about some of the things with their business. And I was saying, why don't you try this idea? Why don't you try that idea? Why don't you try the other idea? And they kept saying they just had a no and a negative answer to everything that I talk about. And it was, no, we can't do this. No, we can't do that. Now, listen, I get it. I don't know his business like he knows it. And maybe he's right to say that some of the things I said weren't possible. But I don't really think he gave it the chance. It was just, he'd rather say no than think outside the box and say yes. So have a skill, be able to communicate and have a positive attitude. And I think if you have those three things, Paige, I came on 4 minutes late, don't worry, I've still got 4 minutes. If you've got those three things, you will be able to thrive during any circumstance. So if the world's going great, you're going to be smashing it, and if the world's not so good like it is now, you will still be able to survive, to make money, to add value, and to make sales.
Completely. I mean, this is something that, I always have this conversation, with either my peers or other businesses that I advise, and that I think people are always very much worried about what image should I have for that platform, or who should I be on that, and you've obviously hit the nail on your head yourself. But insofar as yes, there's always nuances to each platform of how you should deliver your content, how you should deliver your message. But but fundamentally, your brand, who you are, should be consistent across all platforms. But more importantly, it should very much be who you are offline as well.
Yeah,
that's for me, that's a big mistake so many people make, not just in terms of, I guess, giving inconsistencies to their brand, but also making their life so much more difficult and less enjoyable. Because when you have to put an act on to deliver content, when you've got to pretend to be something you're not, and particularly in this social media world, let's say pretend to have more than you've got, etc. You're just making a rod for your own back, and you're going to come unstuck very quickly. You're not going to find it easy to create content, because you're either going to feel out of place, or you're not going to be able to think clearly what your message is. And I mean, I've been doing a lot of Facebook lives during this during this lockdown time, where people feed me questions each night, and one of the things that always comes back time and time again is I struggle to make content for this platform, or I don't know what to talk about for my brand. And I'm always saying that, listen, for me the simplest answer is you don't like what you're doing. Because if you love your brand, no matter how fucking boring some of us may think it is, if you love what you do, then you'll be able to talk about it all day long. And you'll never be short of a story post. You'll never find it difficult to write long form blog content, because it is fundamentally a part of your DNA. But when you're trying to put on an act, when you're trying to rep a brand that it just is not in your DNA, then you're pushing water uphill. Now, I'm not saying it's not possible. Sure, okay, if you're creative enough, we can all put the effort into it. But why set yourself that problem out from the outset when there's so many opportunities to do what you love and believe, and monetize it at the same time?
And the other things that sort of weigh people down in life is perfection. People who get a real delight in being absolutely perfect. That is just another prison. That is just another trap.
Well, I must do 2 or 3 posts a week where I always have the kind of hashtag or the inverted quotes of perfection prevents opportunity. And it's I was talking the other day about one of the most important skills, if you like, in business and in entrepreneurialism, is the ability to just make a decision and to take action, and you accept and realize that it's not going to be perfect, but as long as you know your product, or your dream, or your vision, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be an appalling decision, or an appalling piece of action. It might not be the best decision you could have ever taken, but all you're going to guarantee by taking no decision is not moving forward, and potentially probably moving backwards.
Yeah, and perfection, which is something that's been celebrated for decades, is a handicap. Because what it does, it means that you can't take you can't have an overall perspective. If all you're doing is focusing on the detail, it does not give you perspective.